I learned that about me, like where I was self-sabotaging. I had to take a real look in the mirror and think, what am I doing that is holding me back? Like, why can't I have all the things that I write down that I want and I see myself having? We would do a lot of visualization of future you,
Right.
which is a lot of the work I now do with my clients. And yet I'm like, why am I not there yet?
Welcome to the House of JerMar Podcast, where wellness starts within. The House of JerMar is a lifestyle brand empowering women to live all in interior design and personal wellness. We are a destination for women ready to reimagine what is possible in their homes and lives and then create it. We are honored to have you join us on our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. I am your host, Jean Collins, and I invite you to become inspired by this week's guest. Welcome to the House of JerMar Podcast, where wellness starts within. I'm your host, Jean Collins, and today's special guest is Lindsay Potter. Let me tell you a little bit about Lindsay before we begin our conversation. Lindsay spent the better part of a decade as a marketing director, specializing in building successful beverage brands, before embarking on a transformative career shift in 2020. After being laid off from her corporate role, something I can understand as well, Lindsay embraced a healing journey that led her to pursue a certification as a life coach. Now, she empowers clients seeking career and life changes through her coaching practice. Everyone, please welcome Lindsay Potter to the show.
Hi.
Hey, hello, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm so good. I am so excited to be talking with you today, Jean. I miss you.
And I miss you. And before we started talking, we were just gabbing away how we could actually talk for at least 2 hours on such a variety of subjects. So we're going to try to condense it to some highlights about you and what you do and the benefit that you're giving to the world. And then I'm going to have you back again in about 6 months.
Thank you. Okay, great. I can't wait. And then flip-flop.
Exactly. And so when I was reading everybody the intro to the beginning of this, and I was talking about that you got fired in 2020, I made the comment that,
Laid off. I look
laid off. But I embrace fired. I really, you
It
don't.
wasn't personal, and that
Okay.
was the difference. So it was 12 of us that were laid off.
Yeah.
Fire. It's all the same. There was an
It
abrupt
is.
ending.
Yeah.
Abrupt ending. But it wasn't like you screwed up, you're out.
Yeah.
It was more we had to stop spending money on people, and therefore you're gone.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I've never thought of it that way. I'm sort of like, I was fired. I'm going to raise my hand. I was fired.
There was shame in
Right.
either side.
There
It was a
isn't.
blessing.
You know,
It really was a
because
blessing.
I've had to fire people, flat out
Yeah,
fire them
me too.
and let them go on both instances. So I was like, you know what, for whatever word you want to use, I'm now part of both camps. But anyways, I was commenting about how we have that in common, and we have that in common in the
Yes.
same year during COVID. So
For a woman.
I would love for you to spend some time talking about you and your background and your story, because it is so interesting. So I will let
Well,
you talk.
Thank you. Yes, it was just before COVID that I was let go from, I was head of marketing at a beverage company that I had been in the space for 8 years at the time with the title director of marketing, but I had mainly been with startups helping to build brands from nothing to something. The first brand that I was with them from the beginning all the way through to an acquisition, which was very exciting and emotional and crazy all at the same time. And then the second brand that I worked with in those 8 years, I came in when they were in a major growth phase. They were already the size that the first brand that I had been with who was acquired was. And they were growing to the West Coast. And I spent a lot of time out there. Great experience. It was wild and crazy. It's just startups are wild and crazy. But I love them because you're constantly in building mode. And I'm a builder, entrepreneur at heart, but I really love building things and being a part of a team that is willing to roll up your sleeves and do whatever it takes. And the last role that I had was more of a corporate gig, even though they were calling it a startup because it was acquired from the original owner, moved from LA to New York or to Connecticut. It was called Reed's. It is a ginger beer. You can still find it everywhere. The ginger beer is sold. We were innovating under this new ownership. There were a number of us on the marketing team, and it was a great learning experience because I had never been with an organization. There were a lot of meetings. I wasn't used to that because in the startup world, it's just you have an idea, you go and execute. And if it doesn't work, then you start over. And in the corporate world, and I know you have experience with this too. There's a meeting for the idea, and then there's another to rediscuss the idea. And then ultimately, it's pretty much a top-down decision. That was challenging, but I met some great people and learned a lot from everyone. And then 2020 hits, and I thought, okay, I'll start my own business. I really was at a crossroads. I was in my early 40s. I just did not want to go back to doing what I was doing. I think I had exhausted the experiences, and they really are emotional. Being with a startup, I always equate it to like raising a child, because especially a baby, because it's nonstop and you live, eat, breathe it, and you love it. But I mean, you can't leave that baby by itself. You want to, you want, and I just like had to unplug from all of it. I was sad. And I had also had my children right before. I have 2 kids now who are 13 and 11. And I had them right before I started with Spike Culture, which was the first beverage startup. And so they were babies. And I just felt as though I had been on the hamster wheel of work for so many years, and I needed a break. So I took a few months off. Really
off with your own children, with your own babies.
Yeah. Often really spending time with my kids. But it was a really difficult time emotionally for me, because I felt very lost. Like, I don't even know who I am. And in these past 4 years, I've done so much personal development work. I've had countless conversations with women specifically who have experienced a very similar thing. Like, I kind of lost the sense of self there for a while. And I had to really go inside, which took a long time to figure out, to find myself again. And not to sound like that term, like not to sound woo-woo, but it really was the only thing that did the healing for me. It took me 2 years, a lot of woe is me thinking, which has never been my personality ever. I've always been a confident person. I suddenly had zero confidence. I didn't want to leave the house. I'm the most extroverted human you'll meet. I love people. There was a lot of shame. I can say that now looking back. I felt a lot of shame around, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I had gotten into marketing because I was with a startup and we give ourselves titles. And in my career leading up to that, I had always been in a leadership role, but never necessarily marketing, always like sales and building businesses, but I didn't have that title. And then as I grew with the businesses, especially after the acquisition, the perception of someone that has that title is, well, if you could do that, then you can do anything in marketing.
Right.
And it affected me because I was people pleasing and trying to prove myself. And I know now that I don't need to do that anymore, but you have to go through these things in order to learn. So 2020, I started an LLC with 3 goals. My first goal was to spend more time with my kid. My second goal, which was perfect timing because they were then at an age where they didn't remember me traveling as much as I did when they were little. But the older they get, I want to know them so that they feel like they can tell me things and we have an open relationship. And I know you have a daughter, right? But she's a little bit older than mine right now.
She's now She's now 17, but I used to travel. So it's so funny that you say what you said, because I traveled and was in sales and did that for 22 years. And when she was younger, I always used to say, it'll get easier when she gets older. And then as she started to get older, I'm like, it's not getting easier. It's getting harder, because they actually want you more. And to your point, you're more ingrained in their life, and it matters more to you. It mattered more to me to be a part of her homework and be a part of her friends and
much more
be a part of that social circle, where when you're a baby and you're off at preschool, I didn't realize at the time. I was
actually grateful. I was like, bye.
Yeah, like I didn't realize at the time, like this is actually when I should be traveling and gone, because she's never going to remember and it doesn't matter. But it's the opposite of what people think when they get older. It's easier to be away. It's actually the opposite.
I think it's easier in some ways because you're not physically so in,
right.
But emotionally, you're way more in it. And exactly your point. I knew that was one thing that I wanted. I also had always wanted to be able to work from anywhere. I've always seen people who are entrepreneurs who have the ability to work remotely was something that I always envied, and not in a jealousy way. And I'm like, I could do that. And I really want to be able to do that. And then the third thing was to have a profitable business, which is I'm always working.
There's that thing. Yeah.
But the first 2 I've achieved, and I'm really proud of it. I read back. I'm big into journaling and meditation, and we'll get to that. But I read back on my journals, even from the past 4 years, but I've been journaling as far as I can remember, to be honest. And one of the things that I used to write in my 20s in my journal was, I want to host a show. I will host a show. And I always thought it would be in television. And now I host podcasts, which I love. And I love that you're doing it too. And I love reading back on those journals to see that this was something that I really have always wanted in my life. And a part of the personal development that I've been doing is figuring out, like, finding your inner child.
Yeah.
And what did you love to do as a kid that lit you up? Or what did you want as a kid? Like, I want to be this when I grow up. Because I'm the type, unlike, like, my husband has always wanted to teach, and he lives his truth, his passion. He knew it from when he was 17 years old. It's what he does. There were some iterations along the way when he was young, but he's one of those people.
Right.
I'm more like, I'm figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out.
You and me both.
And I might forever be in that journey of, this is where I am now in the evolution of me. And then my next phase might be something else. I got certified to be a life coach. I don't like to use the term life coach, but really, I've always been a coach. And in this past 4 years, I realized how much I wanted to help other people because I've been helped by coaches. I hired a coach about a year and a half into the feeling sorry for myself mode. It had gotten bad. I was like, I need to do something. And I think the more I had talked about it, the more my phone was listening and serving me ads for high performance coaches. And so I ended up getting on the phone with a sales guy from a Tony Robbins style coaching thing.
Yep.
They're trained to get you to say yes.
Of course.
To coaching.
They're good.
And they're very good. I did that. I did say yes. And I remember my coach that they paired me with, I said, I really want to work with a female, and I prefer to work with someone who had kids because I wanted to be able to relate to them and them to relate to me. And so they paired me with this woman who is still and forever will be a friend of mine. And she lives out west. We started working together. And after about a year of working together, she said to me, we were talking about the growth that I had experienced. And she said to me, when I first took you on as a client, they had sent me the intake notes from the sales team. And you had said to the sales guy that you were crying in your suit when you were on the phone with him. And I was like how bad it was. That's how bad it had gotten. I really felt like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get out of this headspace. I don't know what to do or how to do it. And through the work with her, I learned that about me, like where I was self-sabotaging. I had to take a real look in the mirror and think, what am I doing that is holding me back? Like, why can't I have all the things that I write down that I want and I see myself having? We would do a lot of visualization of future you,
right?
Which is a lot of the work I now do with my clients. And yet I'm like, why am I not there yet? And that was 2 years ago. Then slowly but surely, it started to work itself out. I was taught transcendental meditation. A friend of mine gave me that gift, connected me with a teacher, and I was given a mantra, which is the transcendental meditation way. And meditation had always been something that I had dipped into. I've always had or I used to teach yoga, and I've always gone to meditation classes, and I've always wanted the practice to be a part of my daily life, but use the excuse of like, I can't just.
You're a little too ADHD.
And like I always say, ADHD works for me, but really meditation is the most beneficial thing for my ADHD.
Yeah.
So now, that was in October of 2020. And I had also done a 30-day dry January in January of 2022. So I stopped drinking. I've never had an issue with drinking, but I was working in the alcohol space for 8 years. I was always working at events and going to events. And I'm a very, as I said, extroverted, social person. And alcohol and drinking was just kind of it's a part of our culture. It's like the only legal drug out there. Accessible, legal.
Right.
And so I never drank to get drunk, but I always was mildly hungover. And I'm talking about a couple of drinks any given night of the week, a few glasses of wine here, nothing like, let's get bombed. But I was drinking on average 4 nights a week, some weeks 7 nights a week, socially, just with my husband, with friends, or we live in a very concentrated neighborhood. Everyone's over all the time, just socially. And what I realized through the meditation was that being hungover was holding me back from a lot of things, because I would wake up the next day and I was doing my best to build a business, but I wasn't doing the things that moved the needle. I
Yeah.
was doing the to-do list. Oh, well, if I just check off all these boxes, then I'll feel accomplished.
Right.
Look, I made my bed today
Right.
and I emailed so-and-so, but I
Yeah.
didn't put myself in an uncomfortable situation. I didn't do the things that I need to do to get out there and start driving revenue into the business, connecting with the right people. I was afraid and I was hiding. And so then I did another dry January. I started meditating, and I'll use the timeline in 2022, October. And I was really devout to these 20 minutes twice a day, which is challenging. It was so hard for me in the beginning. I
So
remember
hard.
so hard, Jean. I would sit down with the teacher. I said to her, I really don't think I can sit here for 20 minutes. Like, that is an eternity to me.
A long time.
Long time. And the first time she sat with me and we did it together, and the 20 minutes was up and it felt like a long time, but it was cool because every thought that went through my head, I don't remember what I thought of when I first sat down, and so many thoughts poured through my head. But as she said, you just let them come in and then you let them go out, and you think of it like the ocean waves.
It's amazing,
Rolling.
isn't it?
Amazing.
I just learned
and
it.
Then, it's incredible.
It is.
And for me personally, and I recommend it to anyone, and I always say, if you don't want to commit to the TM practice, then just using an app 5 minutes a day, even sitting with your own thoughts, can change your life.
Yeah.
Genuinely. And I'm such a cheerleader for inner peace and inner wellness. So that was in October. Then in January, I really stopped drinking, and that stuck. And so I think it was 6 or 7 months without a sip of alcohol. And honestly, I didn't even think about
Was
it.
it hard? That sounds
Wasn't
really hard.
I know it does. I think it was because I had known that I really wanted that to change in my life. And I knew that if I didn't sacrifice something, that nothing was going to change.
And let me ask a question. How did you
Yeah.
hold yourself accountable with sticking to that goal? Because that's one of the hardest goals I think there is.
It is a great question. I think I just was really ready. So when I actually stopped, it really wasn't difficult because I had prepared for it. Like, I did the dry January the year, and we're talking about years,
Right.
the year before.
Yeah.
And I slowly got back into socially drinking. And then, because again, it's just what everyone does. It's like a discomfort if you don't have a cocktail in your hand. But now for me, I just have a seltzer, or I drink a lot of water. Sometimes when I want something and we're out, I'll have a Diet Coke, which I never really drank soda, but I do the taste of it sometimes randomly, but I don't think about it. I just don't. And it also helped with saving money, which I wasn't making a lot. So it cut back on massively on the spend. Massive. You go out to dinner and you realize that you're spending just as much on alcohol as you spend on food. If not,
especially where
twice.
we live, for sure.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Not twice as much.
Yep.
So it really wasn't difficult. And then last summer, so now it's been a year and a half. So last summer, we go away in the summer. We have a place up north in the woods. And I would definitely have a cocktail at night. Oh, I'm on vacation, but it would take me 3 hours to drink it. And it was just something in my hand. So I was like, what's the point of having a beer or vodka when I'm not looking to get anything from it?
Right.
It really wasn't difficult. But again, not only did I do the dry January twice, but I also had downloaded this app, which is called Reframe.
Okay.
And I was devout to the apps. They send you like a little reframe every day of mindset reframe. Okay, if you're thinking like this, and what about switching it to think like this? And just those little tiny reminders. And this was before I had stopped. I would be having drinks, and then the next morning it would say, after day 1 or day 2, it starts every day. It tells you, okay, you've gone 1 day without alcohol. This is what's happening to your body. All the positives that happen to your body. And then you're on like day 37, which I did the app again before I stopped drinking.
Right.
I was on the app for close to a year, and you're 200 days in, and it's like your liver has completely remade itself, and you're basically the healthiest human you've ever been. So that knowledge just fed into the desire to really want to optimize. And then I really just got to this place last January. Wow. Where I was like, I know that I can do all the things that I want to do in my life. I know that I can make it happen. I'm capable. So something has to change. And it just did. And I'm so grateful because I don't miss that part of my life at all. I don't feel any less social. I actually feel much more empowered when I go out socially because I don't need it and I don't crave it. And Granted, I'm like a very social person, comfortable in social situations. I could talk to a wall. I could be alone at a party and make friends
You are
with.
so social. I follow you on
Just love,
Instagram.
love, love.
I am the closet introvert. You are so social. It gives
Well,
me
so many
anxiety
people.
sometimes. I'm like, look at you.
I mean, I get a lot of anxiety. My husband always said that he was the extrovert until he met me. He values alone time more than I do. And that's something that even now in my life, I'm like, I love alone time, but I prefer being around people. And most people don't. Most
Right.
people prefer not being around people. And yeah, I'm just not that person.
Yeah.
So that's really
Okay.
the journey of healing. And again, there's so much more to it, but I really started realizing these things about myself that I was not taking a look at. Like, why am I not doing the things that make me really light up?
Right.
And helping people, like coaching people. I was a big lacrosse player back in the day. I was very competitive in college and high school, and I loved coaching lacrosse. My sister and I both coached in our 20s. And I started coaching again a few years ago, little kids. And as my daughter was growing up, I was coaching her team, and I loved coaching. And then 3 years ago, I thought, when I hired my coach and she was coaching me as an adult, I thought, oh, God, every adult needs some sort of coaching. It's not a therapist.
No, we all need a
Because-
coach. All of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Every successful person that I know has a coach.
I was talking to a coach today, a mindset coach who I've done work with before. And I said, I have yet to meet a single coach or entrepreneur who doesn't believe in having a coach.
It was integral to my shift. I was in a mindset coaching group a couple months ago, and now I'm doing my own mindset coaching groups, even though no one signed up to my first course. But that was a great learning for me, because had I not done all the mindset coaching, I probably would have wanted to just give up and throw in the towel. I put together this whole big course and no one showed up, but I didn't do enough marketing for it. I have a harder time marketing myself, I've learned, than I do anyone else.
Well, isn't that funny? Because you are a marketer.
I'm like everyone's cheerleader. I love marketing. I'm definitely good at it now. And I have a really hard time marketing me, because it has to come from, we all have ego. It's what drives us. But I don't lead with my ego, like, look at me and what I'm doing. So it's easier to help market other people. But when it came to marketing my own coaching business, I would be like, not ready to talk about that yet.
Yeah.
You know? And so no one signed up. But had I not done all the mindset coaching work that I've done in my own life, I would have given up. But now I'm like, okay, reframe, great learning experience. What could I have done differently? Okay, so nobody signed up. Maybe it was the timing. I want to do it again in the fall. And I really prefer working with groups. I love my one-on-one clients, but I really love the energy of a group, because you're going to relate with not every single person in that group, but you're going to learn from people no matter what. So I'm going to launch it again in the fall. And this time around, I'll send more than one email. I will post more than one Instagram post. Like, I just really, it was bare minimum effort.
You're
So
like a week or two before. You're like, okay, here it is.
I mean, it was, and do you know how hard it was for me to do that? I did one video. I know that your listeners haven't watched it, but I did one video to promote this thing. It took me 3+ hours to do that. I went to the beach. I had to find the perfect spot, even though nothing has to be perfect, because at the end of the day, nobody cares as much as you.
As much as you do.
I coach people on that. And here I am with self, like, bad.
Right.
So,
Yes, the guy look horrible. Where's my filter? I stumbled.
Right. It was more like self-criticism.
Of
and
course.
just the discomfort of, oh my gosh, just me talking to me and the camera. I've gotten better at it. And I'm excited for when I launch the second time and do it right. But yeah, so helping people is something that's inherently in me. I'm always helping people. And I was like, why can't I not do that as a job? And even if I'm not doing it full time, because I'm not making enough money yet to sustain like a salary, I'm not there yet, because it's a new business. But it's giving me the space to learn, do other things that I'm also interested in. And I'll always have it in my toolkit. It's not like I'll stop being a coach. You know, I'm constantly re-educating myself. How can I be better?
Constantly learning.
And constantly curious.
Constantly
and
learning.
My coach and I have remained close, and I've watched her evolve as a coach. So when I started with her, she was technically a high performance coach, and which is what I thought I needed. I'm a high performer and I need to work hard, and this was part of my DNA. And actually, Betsy, when I talked to Betsy, the intuitive, you had shared with me, which so amazing.
Yes.
And I just shared her contact with someone else and two other people who have since spoken with her. But she said to me, and I've never done a lot of past life work. I have friends that have done it. And if listeners have not yet done it, it's really pretty neat to do. But she had said in one of your past lives, you really struggled and you work like a really hard physical manual labor. You work and you have struggled taking care of your family and it was a struggle. And then in another past life, you were a healer and part of like a tribe where you were like the shaman of the tribe and the healer. So in this life, you're bringing the two together. So you're breaking the cycle of that mentality of I have to work hard in order to be successful.
Right.
And I'm always willing to work hard. It's not about that. It's like burning yourself so hard where you don't have that inner peace. And
You have to work
so
smart.
work smart.
Yeah, and you have
necessarily
to
smart.
have life as we get older, especially people that I speak to that are entrepreneurs. One of the reasons why we want to be entrepreneurs is we want balance and we want more control over our lives. And we're not against working hard. It's just how do we work smarter to get the
Right.
same results? Because we still want the same
Well,
results. We're not exactly looking to like
How
downgrade
many
life.
times, I don't know, how many times have I thought to myself in the past 4 years, I'll just go back and work for someone and have a full-time job and have that salary and that will solve everything.
Right.
But ultimately, I've had a number of opportunities and I've gone into interviews and it's such a gut instinct, like I don't belong here.
Right.
This is not
That's
going to make
good.
me happy. I know that I can do this on my own. And because I have found that the balance of being able to work when I work and work in the things that level me out. So yes, meditation, exercise. I've always been an athlete and exercise is at this point in my life more for my mental health than for my physical vanity. I love to stay healthy, but if I don't exercise, my brain is in overdrive and then it starts fire. It's like firing instead of the engines are moving together. So those are things that I'm able to work into my life and not have them feel like a chore. Like when
Right.
I was going to work somewhere, you have to be here at 9 and you have to leave at 6 and you really don't have time during the day to do anything else because you need to be sitting at a desk, which I think is
Ridiculous.
so absurd, so unhealthy. And so now that I have this flexibility, but that being said, you do have to roll up your sleeves. And I probably work more now than I ever have, but I'm so in it and I love it. And it's for me and my family. It's not for someone else necessarily right now.
It's fueling your
Not that I'm
passion.
shut off to ever
Yeah.
working for someone else, but it would be more as a consultant than as a full-time employee.
And it has to still tap into your passion. I think once you do some of that inner work like you've done, and now you've figured out the things that light you up, you don't want to be spending your days doing things that don't light you up, that don't excite you and help you grow and feel passionate and feel like you're contributing because you want to give back.
I don't think I could. I honestly don't think I could. It would feel like I never have felt like that. My first job out of college, I worked in advertising in New York City. I grew up in Southern Connecticut. You get out of college and you either go into the city or you stay here and work, but most of us went into the city. And I was in a little cubicle and I remember coming home and saying to my parents, I went from being a big lacrosse player in college to like in a tiny little cubicle that I shared with someone. And it was a great organization and the work itself was fun. We were constantly going to events, but it was like 9 to 9 every day. Take the train in, take the train out. Lucky if you get a workout in. And my boss was super cool. Yeah, all of that was great. They made it fun, but you were in this tiny little cubicle. Remember, computers were like, I can't.
Huge.
Computer was great. It's not even in the screen. I have a picture of that first desk. And I remember the girl who sat with me, Christine, we still keep in touch. And we would have to say, hey, can you push your chair in so that I can get out and go to the bathroom? That's how tight it was. And then I came home one day and I said to my parents, I don't belong here. I'm going to go move up to Vermont and teach skiing. They were like, oh boy.
Oh, yeah, that college education. There you go.
But I've always chased what felt right and always landed in really great work opportunities and always been able to take care of myself financially. But yes, to your point, I will never be able to go back to something that isn't feeding me, fueling me in a
Right.
way that I feel like I'm making an impact.
Yeah.
I know that I'm here to make an impact on other people's lives, on my family's life, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. So talk to me for people who don't know what a life coach is. What does that mean? What do you do?
The way that I explain it, I've been working on finding my niche within the life coaching. Life coaching is a pretty big term. It's a broad term. And I going into it, I thought, I don't necessarily know if I'm a life coach, but we all are if you're life coaching. My niche has been more working with people who are wanting to pivot in their lives, like wanting to change something. Most of them are career, but some are relationships, some are just who you're being in the day. But the way I describe it is a therapist is someone you go to untangle your past, and a coach is someone you come to create your future. And that's what I love about coaching, because I get to work with clients and we get to create where they see themselves being. And they have to be willing to do the work. That's the only challenge, because a lot of people want a quick fix, like the health care system and dietitians and nutritionists. I actually had a meeting with a nutritionist yesterday who's wonderful. And she said the big challenge is that people want a quick fix. And there are things like Ozempic out there that provide that. But ultimately, like anything in life, it's not sustainable. You're not going to stay on that stuff for your whole life, I hope.
No.
So same with coaching. If you want change in your life, like I did 3 years ago, it's changing little habits and doing the work it's showing up for yourself every single day. We had talked about Mel Robbins before we got on air, and she's one of those people on my list of thank you for helping me get through the toughest times, because I see Mel Robbins as someone that I was like, I want to be like, that's who I want to be. I want to make an impact like that. And she put out a video yesterday. I remember she was walking and she just said, it's about showing up for yourself. You have to show up for yourself every single day and hold yourself accountable to the little changes that you want to make. You want to drink more water? Then write it down when you're drinking water and do it. Drink the water.
Right. Sure.
Don't do it for one day and then the next day be like, totally forgot. I am terrible at drinking water. I'm just using that as an example because I'm looking at
but
my,
it's a good one though.
Water.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Okay.
It's hard to hold yourself accountable to making these tiny little changes that ultimately are the only thing that will move the needle for you. And that's the work that I do with my clients. The other piece about starting something like this later in life is that it's hard to be a beginner. Someone says, oh, your life can change overnight. It just takes years to get to that day.
I
love that because it's so true. Like everything can change for you overnight, but it's not because you woke up and everything changed, just because you've been doing all of these little things every single day, showing up for yourself because you wanted to change something. And now you've done it. And now there's no going back. Like for me, the drinking, there's no going back. If I have a beer here and there, whatever, there's no going back to how I used to be, period, end of story. Right. It's not a question. And I'm back to gratitude always. I am grateful that I never had an issue with alcohol. I don't have alcoholism in my blood. And that is a very different ballgame, So I was able to make that change. But the little thing, and some days I do not want to wake up and meditate. Some days I want to sleep in. But what does that do for me? Right. So I constantly am thinking about how I'll feel if I don't do it. And that goes back to the future you.
I was going to say, I had someone say to me, what would your future self think about this present self's decision? And I think about that sometimes when I'm like about to go eat a cookie before I make dinner. And I'm like, wait, on the goal card, it says I'm trying to reduce my sugar intake. So hold on, I'm trying to hold myself accountable on a goal card to have less sugar. And is my future self what is my future self going to think or feel about myself if I have that cookie before dinner and then I actually don't?
Like, why am I not losing weight and getting healthier?
Yeah, right.
Oh, well, I have been eating cookies every day. It's the little things. Not that you can't ever have the proverbial cookie.
Of course.
Not that you can't ever watch TV at night when you should be working or meditating. It's not about that, but it's about the majority of the time doing the things that are harder, because that's the only thing it's like getting in shape. I always use fitness as an analogy because, again, it's such a big part of my life. But when I haven't been to the gym in a week or two, which happens all the time, I can feel my body like atrophying because I lift weights. I've always had. And it's like, how are you going to build a muscle? You can't just look at it and have it grow.
It's work.
You need to work. It's work, and it's hard work. And most days you don't want to do it. But every day that you show up for yourself, you leave feeling so much better. Everyone that has ever exercised knows, go in not really wanting to. You come out, thank God I did.
So glad I did it. Just even if it's
so there are other things in life that are like that too.
So many
like
things. So true. Oh my goodness. You're so honest, but it's,
And that's good.
you're like, wow,
That's
that was
smart.
good. Huh. Why do I always say I'm so tired? Huh. All right. Yeah, right. Yeah. Then your present self needs to talk to the past self and be like, remember
Past
how great
self.
that was before?
Right.
Yeah.
I know,
You know?
exactly.
I
But
love that.
it really is true. And the other piece of that puzzle that I didn't mention before is, and I've said it a couple times, but is gratitude. So I started practicing gratitude. I actually started publicly practicing it.
So
last,
tell me, what does practicing gratitude mean
yeah,
in your universe, in your life?
great question. So in my world, it just means saying out loud or writing down something I'm grateful for.
Okay.
So I have this 5-minute journal someone had given me years ago. I started it in 2017. I actually was looking at it last night because I've gotten into it again. And because journaling is something that I'll like take breaks from, but I always find that it really helps me process thoughts, especially when life gets a little crazy in conjunction with meditation. But so writing down 1 to 3 things you're grateful for, it's not hard. It's hard to have that practice or saying it out loud. And the more you practice it, and I'm curious to know if you practice gratitude and what that looks like for you, but the more for me that I practice it, the more it's just ingrained in me. And I actually genuinely have this ability now to shift out of negative headspace and into a positive, because I just think about anytime I think about what I don't have or where I'm not yet, which is a natural human thing to think. I think we all skew negatively naturally, and then we have to work to be in that positive headspace. I always just check myself like, wait a second, let's just list a couple things that you're grateful for. And then that list just goes on and on and on. And it's ridiculous. Start with health, start with a roof over my head, start with the basic, like I have food to eat. I'm a healthy person. My kids are healthy. My family's healthy. And then again, on from there. But do you practice?
So I've used the 5-minute journal for 3 years. Like religiously, I use the 5-minute journal. And I recommend it to everybody. And like if I go on vacation, I might not bring the journal. I'll bring a journal and I'll still write all the same things in the 5-minute journal. And I also start every day before I get out of bed, like hand on heart, things you're grateful for. And
Practice.
it's practice. And but it's also, like you mentioned, a really good point about it. I find when people or situations are annoying to me, I'm not like proficient at it, but I do try sometimes to be like, what, wait a minute. Let's think about the things to be grateful for about that person, not their actions that are annoying you. Or if a client is doing something that's annoying, it's like, okay, let's try to not focus on the things that are annoying, because other humans, our relationships, just people are annoying. And it happens. Our children are annoying. Like they do annoying things all the time, right? And so trying sometimes, instead of living in the I'm annoyed and frustrated with you, as my daughter's 17, and there can be a lot of things that are frustrating with a 17-year-old, like peeling it back and being like, you know what, I am just so grateful that she's a great child, or I am so grateful for this time with her. Like cherish the time.
You were 17.
Yeah.
I take my back to that time. Like I have a 13-year-old.
Oh, I was terrible. I wanted nothing to do with my parents.
I'm so grateful that she's not necessarily, but it is a lot. They're teenagers and they're figuring out their life.
They are.
I love that you shift into that, because it really is true. And you can't change other people. And we all live in our own universe. Everything in my world is, we become myopic sometimes.
Right.
So you're dealing with someone that's annoying you or something that you can't change. It's like, can I change this? No. What can I change about who I'm being in this situation? Right. I don't want to let it eat away at me.
But it is work. I mean, to your point, like this stuff is work. Like to get to be at a healthier inner place with yourself is work. And you have to be willing to show up and hold yourself accountable and do the work. And if you do, then you can get to a much better place, and you are proof of that, right? Which is amazing. So talk to me. I don't want us to run out of time. Talk to me about, no, it's okay. Talk to me about your podcast. Talk to me about what you're doing for the town of Greenwich, because you are doing so many cool things. And I want to make sure we have time to talk about that.
Thank you. Yes. And I just want to feel that about doing the work, because again, back with quick fixes, everyone wants that quick fix, but life, while it's short, it's also really long, and anyone can change anything in their lives. They just have to be willing to show up for themselves. So the podcast, last January, I started my own podcast that's called Constantly Curious. I really started that back to the journal when I was 22 years old. I reread it and was like, you know what? I've always wanted to do this. I had been doing some voiceover work. I love that. And I had always been curious about starting a podcast. I bought a microphone, like a mic that you have. I bought one the year before, and a full year before, and didn't do anything with it. So I had bought the microphone a year before. This was back when I was in that fear headspace. I'm afraid to put myself out there. And I was driving with a friend of mine who has a thriving business, and I'm so proud of her. And I always have supported her from day one. And she had asked me to come support her with who's going to be on TV for the business. And we were driving, and I said, I really want to start this podcast. I just can't come up with a name. And she said, well, why do you want to do it? I said, well, I'm constantly curious about the world around me, and I just want to share stories about entrepreneurship, really, because I was feeling really lonely working for myself, and I needed some sense of community. And granted, COVID had just ended, but still, I was lonely, and I didn't handle that very well. And he said, just call it that. Just call it Constantly Curious. Done.
Yeah.
My friend Brooke, who owns a company called Monogram Mary, I'll give her a shout out because she is the best and has always supported me. At my lowest, she always believed in me. And now as I grow back into myself, it's nice to feel like confident again, because feeling secure around your friends who are doing well is also a really difficult thing.
Tough.
Really hard.
Because you compare yourself to them. Everybody, we all compare ourselves to other people.
I know, but there was so much shame, and I've always done well, and now I'm not doing well, and I don't want to be anywhere with people. So anyhow, I started the Constantly Curious podcast, and I started by interviewing my friend of mine who has an acupuncture business. And let me tell you, episode 1, we went to record in a cafe and Odalie. I didn't know anything. I didn't have headsets. I didn't know anything. And we ended up recording. I ended up forgetting the plug to the mic. It was ridiculous. I just looked at her and I said, it has taken me so much to get to this point. And we just record on the computer. I don't even care if I never put it out there.
Right.
It to date, my most listened to episode.
I have to go back and listen because I've listened to a lot of your stuff, but I haven't listened to that one. So I'm going to go all the way back and listen to that one.
For 12 years. So it was my most listened to episode. Talk about looking back and laughing about how ridiculous it was. But then I really started to dig in, and I have interviewed so many amazing people. So I've done 15 interviews with that podcast. And then a friend of mine came to me about a year ago, Scott, who's my co-host with the Building Greenwich podcast, and said that he wanted to do this project. He had purchased the domain greenwichct.com. So in the town of Greenwich, which is a very large town, we have 62,000 plus population, and it can be a very intimidating town. And we both grew up here, and I'm very comfortable everywhere in the town. And I want for people to feel a sense of community. And so he had owned the domain, but it was kind of dormant. And initially we were going to build out this website whereby it would be a cultural hub for the town. So Greenwich has greenwichct.org, which is our town's like logistics operations. You go there to get your park pass. You go there to get permits to build on your house and anything logistical or operational, or learn more about the town. But there's nothing cultural online that's like a hub for our town.
Okay.
So we envisioned it. We drew it out. We had a designer work with us. Like, we really have the entire plan for what the site will look like. But then we priced it out, and it was way out of budget. So we agreed that I said, well, I've got this podcast and I know how to do it. And so we, long story short, started podcasting back in January. And it's actually been really nice to have a co-host because we're so different and we get along great. Like, our kids have grown up together. We've known each other a very long time and have a very different outlook on the world. Obviously, we're different genders, but also he'd been in the real estate world for 20 plus years. I've been in and out of entrepreneurship forever. I know nothing about real estate. So it's been fun. And the goal is we've started interviewing people around town. This morning, we did an interview with the CEO of an organization called Family Centers, which has been in the town of Greenwich since 1891 and was started by women who wanted to support women with children who really needed support around just like raising a child. They say it takes a village, and this organization became the village for a lot of families. And what they do is, it's hard to even put into words, so I won't attempt it, but Family Centers, look it up. We've been able to share some pretty incredible stories of people in our community that are doing amazing things, whether it's CEO of a nonprofit or small business owners. Greenwich has gone from being a town that had a lot of mom and pop shops to big business. It's Greenwich Avenue, real estate through the roof. And so the mom and pop shops have been driven out. Like Old Greenwich still has that quaint mom and pop shop. A lot of my friends own businesses in downtown Old Greenwich. And it's really nice to be able to support. When they say support local, it's kind of hard to do in Greenwich downtown anymore because all of these businesses
All the big businesses are
local.
there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we're doing with Building Greenwich. And eventually the website will be up and running in the way that we want it to. A map of the town that's very interactive with every business listed and, down to what's the dress code when you go to certain restaurants.
Love
Can I
it.
go there? These are little things that people ask daily. And it really started because Scott and I both get asked by a lot of people, him for his business, me just from being a local. People are constantly asking me like, hey, have you been to this place? Or do you know of a good doctor? Or where can I get a great lasagna? I have a list of questions that people have texted, DM'd, called me
Yeah.
over the years. And they always say, well, you're kind of like my Greenwich resource. And so it made sense to just go with that. And if I can support people, and I've also been doing these local business spotlights, which actually I really didn't have the intention behind it. Oh, this is going to be something. I'm going to start charging money for it. But I started doing it for free for businesses to shine a spotlight on these local businesses. And I knew most of the shop owners when I started. I just did it on Instagram. And it was a way for me to put myself out there a little bit. I do a customized voiceover. I would get out and meet the people and go to the business and shoot the content. And I was doing a lot of content creation and social media management to make money when I was in this career shift, which I'm grateful for because I learned so much. But now as part of Building Greenwich, I offer that as an add-on if you'd like for me to come and cover your business. So it's fun to look back and think, wow, I didn't realize what I was doing would lead to something, but it felt right. It just felt
You did because it felt good. And guess what? The money's coming after that because the service you should charge for.
But that's how it should be. It's something that I'm always working on, and knowing your worth, especially as a woman, and charging for what it's worth, the work that you put out.
Because your knowledge and your skills are valuable, and don't diminish
and experience
those.
so valuable.
So valuable.
So I'm finally getting there too, but
I love it. So as we're running out of time, you've answered so many of my questions about inner wellness. So thank you for that. And you just are a role model of how if you put in the time and put in the work, you can get there. But I love to have my guests share a book that they have read that impacted their inner wellness that you can share with the audience, because I'm a huge proponent of continually learning, just like you're continually curious is such a great name for a podcast. And I just think that I buy books all the time from people that are on podcasts as guests because they recommend books. So what's yours?
I do too. And I asked you before we got on air because I remembered that you were going to ask me this question and I didn't have to think twice about it. But so this is the book. It's called Journey to the Heart, and it's daily meditations on the path to freeing your soul. A friend gifted it to me 3 years ago. And it's a short passage every day. You can just see this is March 14th. That one is Observe Yourself. And I've kept it on my bedside for the past 3 years. I'm in year 3, which is so crazy. I see notes that I wrote 2 years ago. And I opened it to the page where I had put a Post-it in here on May 21st of last year of 2023 that said something to, now I can't find it, but something to the effect of, here it is, Dear me, you are handling situations better than your old self would. Nice work.
That's great. I love it.
And it's one of those just daily, if I read it, year 1, I was reading every single day. It was really helping me think about the big picture and not sweat the small stuff. And now I'll dip into it and it just makes me feel so good. And I have gifted it to countless number of people who all have said the same thing to me. Like, this book is getting me through. I didn't realize how much I would value it. So I'm sending you a copy.
I love
that book. And I'm always reading motivational, inspirational, entrepreneur, work style books. And I've read probably 30 in the past 3 years. I took a picture at one point of a stack of books.
Nice.
But that's what I enjoy reading. But this one is different.
Too.
This one is more just, it's like the daily
motivation,
check-in.
daily check-in, daily inspiration. I love it.
Exactly. And before we get off, I just want to say thanks to you. I'm really proud of you as a new friend of mine for starting this podcast, for writing the book that you wrote. You were an inspiration to me. I followed you on Instagram before we met, and your career pivot You've raised this healthy, beautiful daughter, and the book that you've written, that's another thing that's on my bucket list. So thank you for being an inspiration and for doing what you're doing right now. I love the House of JerMar and everything that it stands for. So I'm really excited for you for the future.
Thank you.
It's going to grow and be amazing.
Thank you. I find that like minds attract like minds. So that's one of the benefits of having a public platform and having a business and having an Instagram account and having a podcast is that you tend to get attracted to people that are like-minded. And I've been so fortunate to have met some incredible people, and you're one of them. So thank you.
Thanks.
Where can my audience find you? And I'll put all of this in the show notes, and I'll put the book in the show notes too. But where can my audience find you if they want to follow you to learn more?
I live in Greenwich, and they come. I am online on Instagram. Official Lindsay Potter is my personal account. And then you can find all of my other accounts, like Building Greenwich is on there if you're interested in learning more about Greenwich. And obviously on LinkedIn is not obviously, but I use LinkedIn a lot as well for work purposes. And yeah, I'd love to connect with your listeners. And thank you again for having me. It's fun to be on someone else's podcast.
Isn't it? I know it is.
Yeah, well, really appreciate you listening. Yeah, I'm really doing the listening.
No, I love it. You're such a great guest, and I'm going to have you back on again because I know you're working on a lot of great things. So I'm going to have you back so you can help share those things with the audience
love
and
a good
inspire them. So yes, absolutely.
I love the check-in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the House of JerMar Podcast, where wellness starts within. We appreciate you being a part of our community and hope you felt inspired and motivated by our guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review and share it with friends. Building our reach on YouTube and Apple Podcasts will help us get closer to our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. You can also follow us on Instagram at House of JerMar and sign up to be a part of our monthly inspiration newsletter through our website, houseofjermar.com. If you or someone you know would be a good guest on the show, please reach out to us at podcast@houseofjermar.com. This has been a House of JerMar production with your host, Jean Collins. Thank you for joining our house.